Okay, so indeed, once we introduce approximation, we might suffer from divergence in learning, or we're not guaranteed to converge. And that usually depends on the type of approximation that we're using and the type of algorithm. So some of the algorithms that we covered so far include Monte Carlo, either estimation or Monte Carlo control, on policy or off policy, right? Same goes for TD0, one-step bootstrapping, and also TD lambda, which we didn't cover so far, but we will cover in our next topic. You can, for now, you can just think of it as some fancy n-step TD learning, right? A variant of n-step TD learning, and we'll discuss it in our next topic. So with respect to convergence, you can see that for the tabular case, this was covered in the first section of our course, right, when we discussed tabular methods. In the tabular case, all of these approaches are guaranteed to converge. For the linear case, not all of them are guaranteed to converge. First of all of the on-policy variants are guaranteed to converge in the linear approximation case. For the off-policy case, only the Monte Carlo approach is guaranteed to converge, right? It does not introduce any bias in our estimation. And for the nonlinear case, actually also for the on-policy versions, we also introduce some bias that can only be avoided by a Monte Carlo approach. Right? Okay, for the control case, the previous slide was only for the prediction case. For the control case, then things become even more complex. For the control case, we still have convergence guarantees on the optimal policy for all of the approaches that we've seen so far, the Monte Carlo control, SARSA, and the Q-learning. So the tabular case works well. However, for the approximation case, again, once we go to a nonlinear approximation, none of them actually have any guarantees. And for the linear case, Monte Carlo control and SARSA do provide some convergence guarantees, although they might chatter around the optimal value function location. Okay, so it might not reach the exact optimum, but it will converge on some region next to the optimal policy, or optimal approximation, sorry. And so this leads us to the deadly triad, algorithmic triad. So the danger of instability and divergence arises whenever we combine all of the following three elements. A function approximation, right, which is a powerful scalable way of generalizing from a state space much larger than the memory and computational resources allow us to do, right? So in cases where tabular cases are not applicable, function approximation is the way to go. Next, if we include that with bootstrapping, where we update targets that include existing estimates, similar to what we did in dynamic programming or TD methods, rather than relying exclusively on actual rewards and complete returns that we observe in Monte Carlo approaches, right? That are provide us with unbiased estimation of the sum of rewards. So if we have function approximation, bootstrapping, and off-policy training, where we train on a distribution of transitions other than those produced by the target policy, if we have all of these, then we are in danger of instability and divergence, right? Divergence can always occur if the learning rate is too high, or if you're setting things incorrectly, but if these three attributes include in your RL algorithm, then you're in a far greater danger of instability and divergence in learning. How can we avoid instability and divergence? Well, we can avoid using one of these three elements, right? So let's consider doing so. Can we avoid using a function approximator? Well, commonly no. We can't really avoid using a function approximator, right? We need methods that scale to large problems and to great expressive power. State aggregation or non-parametric methods whose complexity grows with data are too weak or too expensive, right? We cannot apply tabular methods. Least square methods, such as LSTD that we covered before, are of quadratic complexity and are therefore too expensive for large problem. Also, they require us to have linear approximation, which in many cases might not be a fitting approximation function. Okay, so let's keep function approximation. Can we avoid bootstrapping? And use, for instance, a Monte Carlo approach, non-bootstrapping methods. So Monte Carlo methods require storing all transitions leading to the final return, and weights are updated only once the final return is obtained, right? These are known as episodic algorithms. On the other hand, with bootstrapping, if we do use bootstrapping, data can be dealt with when and where it is generated. Then we never need to use it again. Normally we do for stability, but we don't need to. The savings in communication and memory made possible by bootstrapping are significant, right? Bootstrapping often also results in faster learning because it allows learnings to take advantage of the state property. Also, often bootstrapping greatly increases efficiency. It is an ability that we would very much like to keep in our toolkit. So, right, one more thing that actually is not written here is that bootstrapping allows us to reduce the variance, the estimation variance, significantly compared to Monte Carlo based method, specifically in long horizon plans, right? And that also contributes to stability and to training efficiency, right? So at the end of the day, in most cases, bootstrapping is actually a powerful tool that we don't want to forgo in most cases. Okay, so let's have a look at the final thing in our deadly triad, right? Which is off-policy learning. Can we avoid off-policy learning? So maybe. On-policy methods are often sufficient, are often good enough. Right, and if we're using model-free, if we're trying to apply model-free reinforcement learning, we can use SARSA rather than Q-learning. If you remember, SARSA is an on-policy algorithm, and we can do SARSA with control. Off-policy methods, however, free behavior from the target policy, right? This is something that can be very useful in many cases. This can be considered an appealing convenience, but not a necessity. Okay, so sometimes we would like to use a different behavioral policy than the one that we're using the one that we're trying to converge on, but it's not a necessity. However, off-policy learning is essential to other anticipated use cases. Cases that we have not yet mentioned, but are important to the larger goal of creating a powerful intelligent agent. We will see such methods later on. In these use cases, the agent learns not just a single value function and a single policy, but large number of them in parallel. And again, we'll see several examples of these later on. Moreover, in many control problems, the policy or the actor evolves over time. Once the policy changes, all our previous experience becomes off policy, right? And in many cases, we would like to reuse our previous experience to better tune our function approximation. Okay, so in general, we could go with on-policy learning, and actually some state-of-the-art algorithms are indeed on policy. But if possible, we can benefit greatly from performing off-policy learning, and we'll also see state-of-the-art algorithms that do perform off-policy learning.